Okay, I've got us right here at the top of the hour. So let's get started. Hello, welcome. Good afternoon or good morning for those joining us from the West Coast. My name is Thomas Meredith. I'm Vice President of Marketing, and I would like to welcome you to our broadcast on the state of resource management. We're excited to spend the next hour with you, share some of this content with you. This is actually the RMI's 5th State of Resource Management address, and we have a lot of information to share with you today. Before we get started, let me cover just a few standard housekeeping items, some of the typical items you expect to hear before the webcast. But just a reminder, we have made a PDF copy of the deck available. It's in your handouts window of your GoToWebinar panel. You can download that if you so choose. And of course, we are recording the webcast as well. We'll get that processed and out this afternoon in an email, so you can watch that back at your convenience. And also, please feel free to share that with any colleagues who weren't able to attend today's broadcast or showing some interest in the state of RM. You can pass that along so they can watch that as well. We will have a question and answer session at the end of today's webinar. So as we go through the content today, as you see these questions, as you see the content come up, if you have any questions, enter them in the questions window of your GoToWebinar panel. I'll be collecting those, and we'll answer as many as we can right up to the top of the hour. And finally, for our resource management certified professionals, our RMCPs on the line, we are offering 1 PCU credit for attending today's webcast, so be sure to claim that. Okay, that covers my housekeeping items. I'll get out of the way here and welcome Randy Mislick, the Managing Director of the RMI. Randy, welcome, and I'll hand it off to you. I don't know if you're on mute, Randy.
Sorry about that. Thank you very much, Thomas. Appreciate it. And thanks everyone for joining. My name is Randy Mislick, and welcome to our 5th annual State of Resource Management. I want to also begin by offering a very special thanks to our 3 sponsors of today's webcast, MavenLink, KeyedIn, and Kimball Applications. We appreciate the support of all 3 of these companies and their interest in resource management. All 3 are, as we know, are very focused on advancing resource management process automation. So thanks again for your help and support of this really important broadcast and the Resource Management Institute itself. Today, we're going to talk about a lot of new information that we have that will hopefully be helpful to you in your organizations in a lot of different ways. I'll start off with a brief introduction of the community itself, for those of you who are not familiar with us. We always talk about some of our perspectives to provide some context for some of the data we're about to share with you, and we'll give you an update on some of those perspectives. Certainly, as we are learning more, our thinking in this area is certainly evolving as well. So we'll share some of that, and then we'll get to the meat of the data and new observations that we have that I hope will be helpful to you in furthering your process transformation efforts, as well as benchmarking yourselves against your peer organizations. We'll conclude with some tools that, if you're not familiar, that you can use to help you with your resource management efforts, and then we'll finish up with a wrap-up and a couple of announcements that hopefully be of interest to everyone. For those of you not familiar with the RMI, we are an institute dedicated to the advancement of resource and workforce management. And so we're really focused on helping with best practice definition. We're doing extensive market research in this area. We have a certification program for resource management professionals, and we are certainly doing lots of different types of events, including this event today. There are 4 areas that we're really focused on are around project performance, utilization of human capital, better customer sat. And one that you'll see us providing more focus on is around employee satisfaction and retention, and specifically employee engagement, and I'll come back to that. We're really proud to share that we are growing really fast. We more than doubled our size as far as member companies over the past year. We service human capital intensive service providers. Essentially, anybody in a human capital intensive environment can benefit from what the RMI does. We are particularly focused on professional consulting services, enterprise IT, product development, and field and support organizations are where a lot of our specialized focus is going. For those of you who were not there, we also ran our first symposium last year in Dallas, Texas. That first-time event drew nearly 100 people from 8 countries and 47 different companies. I'll talk about at the end of this broadcast, and we just recently announced our second symposium also in Dallas later on this year, so I hope you won't miss that. We're focused on 4 big problems now, and the last time I presented this, we talked about project performance, utilization of our human capital, customer satisfaction, both internal and external, depending on whether or not you're an internally focused IT service organization or externally focused. And while we've always been focused on utilizing better RM to improve employee satisfaction, retention, we're redoubling our efforts in this area. As I think most folks know, the job market certainly tightened and competition for talent has heated up. And so we're really focused on that as well. And you know, the RMI talks a lot to these points as to, you know, why there are these continuing issues in our project-based businesses. And there's a number of reasons for it. One is just simply a lack of RM-specific process versus we see a lot of presence of PM processes and quality processes, but a lack of something very specific to resource management. Turnover skilled RM resources. The profession of resource management is much more nascent by historical standards than, say, project managers. So there's few of them out there, and when they turn over, they tend to be a little bit more painful to the average organization. Automation technology, too much reliance on spreadsheets, and we'll come back to a couple of these points. And when it comes to employee engagement and satisfaction, we'll talk more today about our project allocation methods that are linked solely to efficiency as opposed to finding a better balance between employee wants and desires and what our businesses need from an efficiency and effectiveness point of view. And the last is lack of RM-specific process education, and these tend to be the 5 things that get in the way. We've got tons of data to support all that. I'll come back to a couple of these points on as well. And then last, as far as some providing you some background around the RMI. If you haven't been to our website, you know, joining the RMI is free, and up in the upper right-hand corner of the website, you can do that for free, and we provide you opportunities to collaborate through various events like this and through community tools, through our website with people interested in working on RM-related problems. We give you the opportunity to innovate in areas related to resource management, to include both our toolkit as well as our certification program that we provide through education and again, various events where we share best practice information, such as what we're doing here today. So that's my top line of the RMI. So I'll move on to resource management perspectives. By the way, I should have mentioned at the end of the broadcast, we'll try to save some time for Q&A, and there's a Q&A box. I think Thomas mentioned you're welcome to put your questions in there, and I'll try to get to those at the end of our broadcast if we can. So let me come back to these 4 big problems: project performance, underutilization of people, customer sat, and certainly employee satisfaction and retention. The industry progress is largely stalled on this first point of project performance. And so whether you're looking at data from the Gartner Group on enterprise IT or TSIA and professional services, our own data from the Institute, is project performance continues to suffer because there's an over-reliance today on project or quality-specific processes and not enough focus on resource management processes. All 3 are important to us in achieving better project performance. I don't know of a human capital intensive business where the owners of that business, whether it's a corporation or an LLC or whatever, don't care about personnel costs. And certainly you'll see some data from us on we're seeing an increasing awareness and focus on this outside of places where billable utilization has always been important. The productive utilization of people also increasing in importance in every business. And, you know, one way to kind of gauge that is what's the value of 1 point of utilization of your workforce your business. If from a customer satisfaction standpoint, if your projects don't go well, what's the impact on customer satisfaction, whether it's internal or external customers, depending on your organization, it matters. And as we'll start to share over the coming months and years, and as we did in a recent white paper on employee engagement, resource management processes certainly hold some of the answers, not all the answers, to better employee engagement, leading to improved satisfaction and retention. And we hope to be a helpful resource to our member companies in learning more how to do a better job of employee retention in the business. I've shared this before, as you know, we do tons of market research, all available at the moment for free from our website. And one of the pieces of the data we secured back in 2018, just simply what gets in the way, and three big categories, and there's a ton of detail in all of these surveys and research reports that break these three down. But as I mentioned, the RM profession, very nascent. There's just a lot more project managers out there. They've been out there for a long time. Resource management population now growing rapidly, but much smaller than the PM population. And so, you know, finding these people, getting them skilled up is a challenge for organizations. Process design and supporting automation tools, also the two other big reasons why we're not making as much progress as we need to make. And so the RMI is really dedicated to picking apart these problems and helping organizations like yours find some answers to some of the things that we're doing. So the benefits, I'll go through this quickly, is improved project performance, improved utilization of human capital, leading to better financial results for your business, better internal and external customer satisfaction, better employee morale, leading to better employee satisfaction and better employee engagement. And then last one that tends to get left out of the conversation too often, but it's a really important one, is how much management time are we spending internally staffing projects, spending time with the phone tag and email, trying to locate people to put on projects when there's typically a better way. Our parent corporation, RTM Consulting, when they do projects in this area, typically find an abundance of management time being, in our opinion, wasted staffing projects when there's a much simpler, easier way. Automation tools can help with this, and we're trying to help the organization how do you redirect valuable management time to things that are probably better spent with their time, and let a process and a tool take care of some of these outstaffing issues. And last, on the context side, is just another reminder, and a reminder because most of our research, training, and thought leadership that we present are built around these 6 core elements of what we believe a really well-grounded resource management process looks like, and it's made up of these 6 things: a skills inventory, a staffing and allocation method, a forecasting capability, sourcing and development of your human capital, technology like a PSA or PPM tool to support your process automation, and then certainly, like any good process, governance around those things. And so the Institute wraps its thinking and research around these 6 core elements that are all important to what we have embraced as a solution for resource management that is trademarked as just-in-time resourcing, with its underpinnings being the GRM methodology for resource management. So we'll come back to that point as well, but that's just a little bit of context. So as I mentioned earlier, we serve certainly any human capital intensive business, but those specific to enterprise IT, professional consulting services, and now product development are getting a disproportionate share of our time and attention. It's a part of our heritage and where we started from, and you'll find that there are people on our board, our advisory board, that represent companies in these areas, and they're giving advice and input to us, as well as a lot of our research is directed at these 3 particular areas. For those of you who haven't made our past broadcast, but as probably a helpful reminder, we've been tracking from past state webcasts some of the really important points that we've learned from research and work in this space. And I want to repeat them, and we're going to add to them today with some new research and some new data points. but I'll quickly go through these, and you'll again get a copy of these. All of this information is available online through the website. But 8 things that we've learned that are clear best practices. Centralizing your approach to RM is that the data doesn't lie. Centralizing your viewpoint of how I provide visibility enterprise-wide to available resources is a definite best practice. Surprisingly to some, using 2080 for utilization denominator, and I'm going to show you some fresh data today that shows just simply by changing your denominator to something different than what we believe is and should be the industry standard in 2080 has a direct impact on the actual performance of your utilization of people, and there's a number of reasons for that. Implementing a documented RM process is spending as much time and dedication of training and documentation to a resource management specific process, just as you probably have put into project management and quality processes, is really important. Metrics that matter. I'm going to show some new data today on this, as well as are we focused on the right things to help us do a better job of managing resources. But metrics matter, and we're particularly focused on things specific to project performance, utilization, customer sat, and employee satisfaction. Number 5, the RMO. And again, we've got a survey going on right now that's going to provide us some additional detailed data about RMOs, but the RMO is the way of the future for managing human capital intensive environments. We'll come back to that one with some new and fresh data as well. Investing in resource managers, I mentioned a nascent area of this discipline. These people are more scarce than some of the other discipline areas, and so we're doing our part to try to help grow that population, as well as provide education through our certification program to help them get trained up. On the PSA PPM side is we're really working hard to help organizations get better focused on when you're picking resource management capabilities, let your process requirements drive a use case driven selection process for your whatever tool you happen to pick for your PSA or PPM solution. Don't let those fancy demos sway you. Get really, really focused on how's this going to work in my environment. And then last is implementing a 3-part approach. Most organizations struggle with forecasting and capacity planning. If you kind of pick out the areas where most organizations are struggling, this is one of them, is forecasting and capacity planning. And we've got a very specific best practice approach that includes business planning, forecasting, and staffing. Is what we teach in our certification program around how to solve for your forecasting and capacity planning needs. At our first annual symposium, in my closing keynote, I shared that there are 5 things that we're going to keep an eye on over the coming months and years. And these are 5 that I shared that I want to just continue to bring attention to. Is, one that I mentioned earlier is RMOs will become the norm. I'm going to show you some pretty compelling data on where the industry is headed here. Number 2 is the rise of the Uber workforce. This is with us already, and it's going to continue to grow. Is the freelance marketplace is going to explode, and our past reliance on a fixed workforce that we hire with the traditional methods, we're going to have to learn how to do a better job of incorporating freelancers into our work mix and do it in a way that's efficient and effective. Fluid strategic sourcing, how do I find people in different ways and different methods, is going to become really important, and we're putting some time and attention in the Institute against this, and hopefully give you some tools that will be helpful. Employee engagement. I'll talk a little bit today on where we see the RMO playing a very essential role in conjunction with your HR departments and your delivery teams that can contribute substantially to this objective of better employee engagement. And last is from a technology point of view, we're going to see a ton of new innovation in data analytics and particularly artificial intelligence from the PSA PPM vendors. We know that they're all putting some energy, time, and money against this, but it's going to really change the landscape of what happens and how we manage resources in our businesses. So at the I did an update on the state of resource management at our symposium last October in Dallas, and I want to share what's changed since then. And for those of you who attended our past state broadcast, I focus on these key observations, and I've got 4 of them I'd like to share with you today. The first is an observation that simply indicates that companies are more focused on utilization than ever before. And I specifically want to show you about what are the gaps in design of proper metrics and assignment of clear accountability. Now, those in professional consulting services there's always been a lot of focus on utilization of people that kind of came with those billable environments, but we're seeing a clear uptick in focus from product development organizations and enterprise IT organizations, where utilization has become more important than ever as human capital costs continue to escalate, and finance officers are more focused on this than ever before. For those of you familiar and have been participating in our surveys, I thank all of you who do this. A lot of you on this broadcast, I know, have participated in quite a few of these. Our research base has grown dramatically. We've got a data set that now that's literally got thousands of data points, that we're able to provide more sophisticated and in-depth feedback back to all of you with the data that we're building. In the utilization survey that we did back in the 4th quarter, well, we did in the 3rd quarter and asked for a report in the 4th quarter. One of the key findings was real simply that 88% of you now think this is pretty doggone important. And interesting, if I had asked that question in the product development enterprise IT organizations a couple of years ago, I would have gotten, certainly it's always important that we're making good utilization of our people, but it didn't occupy the same amount of time that was from the PS organizations back then. But it's clearly on the rise. Enterprise IT following rapidly moving towards where the billable service providers are, and product development also growing in that area. So your finance organizations are more focused on this than ever before. Not a surprise to us, but we have data now to make our case. I have, since I started talking about this 12 years ago, how we measure resource management has got a lot to do with the result. And so we took data from a survey that had a ton of feedback for us and lots of different responses. And we took the data and asked people, how do you measure 2080, 1760, or 1560, which tend to be the 3 most commonly used denominators. I took that data and then normalized it. Normalized, mean I'll make it apples to apples comparison, and says, so does using a certain denominator make a difference? And the data, again, doesn't lie. In professional consulting services, those using a 2080 denominator outperformed their peers that are using 1760, and they outperformed their peers using 1560. There's a lot of underlying reasons for that, which we laid out in this report. A lot of it, unfortunately, just rationalization of why we're different and why we can't use the 2080 standard. And I love a good debate on this topic, because we got tons of data and facts to prove that the 2080 standard reigns supreme and produces a better result. A lot of it, too, is just attributed to human behavior on trying to depict our numbers in a more, a better light, so to speak. Enterprise IT, same thing. You pick the 2080 standard, you're outperforming your 1760 peers and your 1560 denominator peers as well. So the data doesn't lie. The 2080 is the standard. There's a lot of other ways to deal with, different countries have different PTO standards, work rules, and those kinds of things. And just generally, the RMI advise you to deal with the differences in your targets, not in your denominators, so that we keep our comparisons always fair and accurate in how we do that. So that's a really important finding, data-based, and hopefully that's helpful to folks. From an average utilization standpoint, is one of the things we went after with the survey is there value in linking goals and compensation to utilization performance? And this is data for enterprise IT. Very clearly, better performance when we link in some way a goal or comp or both to utilization performance, we get a better result. We were, I'll just say, quite surprised that in the PS and CS area, the data was quite mixed. It didn't say it wasn't helpful. It just didn't jump off the page as much as we thought it would. We think future surveys are going to correct that. What we think is an anomaly in our data. We didn't have enough responses from product development in this area, but look for this to go forward. You'll see more and more focus on tying in some way goals and incentives to resource management, utilization of human capital. We've done a lot of work relative to the automation technology in this discipline of resource management because it's important, right? We deal with tons of data. And to my point I mentioned earlier is we see too much use of management time and phone tag and email and spreadsheets to try to make the connection between work that needs to be done and people or resources that we have that can do that work. And so the good news is 2/3 to 3/4 of you said, yeah, my tool's helping me. And so that's great. And by the way, there's a ton of really, really good tools out here that can help you with this. The bad news is that 25 to 30% of you said no. That happens to, by the way, roughly equal the number of you who said, I'm out there looking for a new tool. So the PSA PPM vendors, I'm sure, are looking at that and saying, okay, there's an opportunity for us. And by the way, the number one function that people are looking for in their PSA PPM tool is resource management. Again, data doesn't lie. And that's really important to them. And when we see the reliance on spreadsheets that these research reports show, you can see the ongoing struggle. So the good news is it's gotten a lot better over the last 5 years. I think it will get tremendously better in the next 5 years. But there's industry's got work to be done. All right. So let me shift gears to a second observation. And there was some really great data that came out of this. So I mentioned earlier, forecasting and capacity management, really a point of struggle for most human capital intensive or project-based businesses. And when we look at the failures of those organizations to do resource management in an efficient, effective way, one of the things we commonly see as well is a poorly designed and executed skills database. I mean, you have to think about that. If you were in the manufacturing business or distribution business, you don't know where your inventory is and how to use it and how you're going to acquire it. Pretty hard to be able to do just-in-time manufacturing or supply chain management. So in the area of capital-intensive businesses where, just-in-time resourcing built on some of the same fundamental ideas is you just can't do this well unless you've got a well-designed skills database and the processes to maintain it, improve it, and evolve it. And the data from our most recent survey on skills tracking and management identified 3 areas that are clear attributes of organizations that are doing better than those that are not. And it's around the definition of skills by role, ensuring regular updates, some kind of cadence to updating that database, and then how you validate that data. We're all clearly correlated, and I'll show the data with better performance and use of the skills database. So hold that point because I'll come back to it. So again, this data is the research reports out available on the website, and you can find that at resourcemanagementinstitute.com. This is, I just wanted to provide the visual again. I made the point earlier that we're using just-in-time resourcing. We affectionately call JITR internally. These 6 elements you're not doing these 6 things. Any one of these could be the weak link in the chain. One of the weak links in a chain we see most commonly is the one here in green, skills inventory. I mentioned forecasting, being another area that the organizations tend to struggle with a lot. So this area of getting your skills inventory, pretty important. And we've got a ton of data and best practice information around this. So the first part of the data that I wanted to show here and I'm not sure why that slide's not building out here for whatever reason. Thomas, I don't know if there's anything you can do to help me here. Let's see here. I'm trying to think about what I could do. I don't know why this slide didn't build correctly. Well, let me, I'll tell you, I'll give you a voiceover here, and we'll make sure that the PDF deck goes out correctly. Is they're essentially for professional consulting services. We had 59% of you said your skills database wasn't working for you in enterprise IT. Nearly three-quarters, 71%, said it wasn't working for you. And in the product development space, two-thirds says it wasn't working for you. And so I wanted to kind of carry this over to this analysis. You'll see the data just depicted a different way. Apologize for the problem with that slide. This is for professional consulting services, and then I'll come specifically to enterprise IT as well as product development. For PS organizations, again, 59% of you said skills database not working for us. 41% yes. And so when we looked at the attributes of for those of you who said yes, hey, it's working for us, the three most common attributes that we found that didn't surprise us at all was that we had clear skills defined for every role. Surprisingly, a lot of organizations don't have skill definitions at the role level. And by the way, some have the opposite of that, have way too many skills defined for a particular role. How often do employees update their skills? You know, we see a lot of organizations that spend a lot of time and money building the skills database, but then it goes stagnant, or because as we know, as we have turnover and change in our organizations, we train, we redevelop, people's skill sets change. And so the employees updating their skills database, you know, having some mechanism or some cadence to keep that skills database fresh is a really important attribute of getting value out of that skills database. And the third thing is how do the skills information, how does it get validated? And it's opposed to having self-service and depending on employees always getting it right, is having some validation process either through SMEs or managers is another attribute of a well-run, well-managed skills database. So those are three things. If you're building a skills database, you know, it's something we also teach in the certification program. These are three things you got to get right if you want that skills database to work for you. Enterprise IT, it was even more pronounced, is nearly three-quarters of you said, yeah, the skills database not working for us, and about a third said it is. For those of you who said it is, you overwhelmingly told us, and the reason we finally got it right is because we defined our skills by role. We've got a good cadence for updating these things, and we've got management oversight or SME oversight of that data that's going into there. So we know when we go to allocate people to projects that when we're looking at that inventory of skills that we know it's reasonably correct. And then product development. Again, I would say that clearly our data on the product development side is the most nascent discipline that we have at the RMI. We are hoping to entice and bring more product development membership into the organization. Our responses last survey were more than double what we had the time prior. And we'll continue to share this data, which at the moment I don't believe to be statistically valid. But it is reasonably indicative and not out of kilter with what we saw from the other human capital intensive environments. Is for product development, about a third of you said your database is working for you. And again, the same three attributes came out, not exactly in the same proportions, but certainly I'll say directionally correct. And I think we'll find those same three things are underpinnings of a really good and well-run skills database and management system. So anyway, I hope that's really, really helpful. That was really, really great data. And then, you know, certainly doing this, you know, your skills database, any part of a good PPM or PSA tool that's servicing and providing resource management capabilities has got some capability for building, maintaining, and utilizing the skills database for purposes of allocating your projects with the right kind of people. But when we ask folks relative to capabilities for skills tracking and management, this data is consolidated data for the three disciplines, and not too dissimilar when you did the discipline breakdown. And you can go look at the report yourself to see what that says. But anyway, 44% said you're somewhat or very satisfied, but more than half of you said you're not. And we also, by the way, that same report showed a large reliance still on spreadsheets in this particular area. We see the same thing in the forecasting and capacity management area. So an opportunity for the PSA PPM vendors to differentiate themselves from their competitors with attacking these shortfalls that the industry tends to see. And then very specifically, when we ask the question, what's missing from those tools that you have in this area, these were the things that people told us: better flexibility for a skills hierarchy, improving your analysis capability, better automated support for staffing selection based on employee or management input. We'll come back to this employee engagement thing here in a minute. Systems or application consolidation was an issue in some cases, largely around the fact that we've got these things out there called HCM systems and other HR systems, and there's a collision in the industry that is already occurring on, where should my skills database reside? Is it in my PSA PPM system, or should it sit in my HCM system, or should I integrate the two in some way, shape, or fashion? And I think the industry will sort that out, and we're certainly going to provide some influence to the technology vendors in this area. We have some opinions there as well. So anyway, this hopefully good benchmarking information and helpful information for you. And again, I know there's quite a few PSA PPM vendors participating today that I know are focused on this particular area. The third observation that I want to talk about is the place for the RMO. Interesting. 12 years ago, when our parent company, RTM Consulting, was founded, and the term Resource Management Office is something we started using, but there weren't too many of them. But I wrote a white paper, way back when, about this whole area of resource management process, and talked about the growth of what I think is the RMO to look similar in, I'll just say, importance relative to what a PMO does in our, very importantly, in our organizations today in project-based businesses. But the RMO going to continue to play a growing and important role for us in the area of managing our project-based businesses. And so we have a survey going on right now. And if you haven't taken a survey, I'd love you to go out to our website, go to our tab for that, and take the survey. It takes less than 10 minutes. I think the average person's taken 5 or 6 minutes to fill it out. And you get free feedback for taking the survey, and it gives us valuable information that you can use to help benchmark your organization and for the membership to get value from as well. So these are preliminary findings only on the responses we have so far. We're intending to close this survey off toward the end of this month or early in April. We'll publish the report sometime around the middle of April. But here's what the data is telling us, is that 58% of you all now have adopted an RMO concept in your business. That's, I don't have the research data from 5 years ago, but I can tell you I live in this world, and my organization has, and that's dramatically greater than what it was just 5 years ago, and we see that happening. And as you're thinking about your RMO, whether you're evolving or improving it or transforming it or trying to decide whether or not to do it, this survey is going to give leaders in this area tons of benchmark data to help you with, how much should I invest, how big should it be, and what are the kind of things I should mission task it with and measure it on. And so this is the data, so you can see, the primary responsibilities that are being appended to, or these organizations are being tasked with relative to, managing the process of RM for the organization, conducting project assignments, demand planning, supply planning, reporting, and by the way, employee advocacy or management growing, really, really important. And we're glad a lot of organizations are listening to, and I'll show you some, how we think about where the RMO can really help with employee engagement and employee retention in the area. And then primary success metrics. How do I measure? What's important here? And certainly, I'm sure, like many of you, is that picking the right metrics and not getting too detailed is probably as important as picking the wrong. Don't want you picking the wrong metrics or having too many metrics. And so things like project staffing, timeliness, resource utilization, resource forecasting accuracy, employee retention, all important metrics. One that we still don't see enough of is a clear linkage from our research to project performance, but yet not enough organizations tying these organizations to project performance. And so we certainly don't think it should be the only objective, but it certainly ought to be one of those on the list. So something to think about there, but this is what you all are telling us. And again, this survey will be available. The research report will be out sometime in April. I'd love to get a lot more of you to participate and give us some additional data for that. Okay. And the fourth observation I want to share with you today, no surprise, we're in a tightening labor market, and competition for talent. I can't think of a time when it's become more acute than it is right now. So most companies, rightfully so, are focused on employee retention and morale, and how can I do a better job of that with my organization to make it a competitive advantage for our businesses. And while the RMO and resource management processes are not the answer, they are clearly part of the answer to better employee engagement. And HR organizations and delivery organizations certainly will continue to play a very important role here, but we think the RMO will be part and parcel to that. At the symposium that we had in Dallas last October, as I mentioned, one of the 5 future things that I said we're going to keep an eye on was this whole area of employee engagement in the RMO. I mentioned 5 things that I thought were quite relevant. Is that workforce stability is always going to be important to our organizations, but yet as I wrote in the most recent white paper that's out on our website on employee engagement, as a part 1 of a 3-part series that we're writing on this whole topic, is millennials are now more than half our workforce, and they just have a different set of desires, wants, and needs, and we have got to be doing a better job of how do we match what we're offering in the marketplace to a changing complexion of what our workforce is made up of. So really, really important. Traditional HR certainly will always continue to contribute to this, but they're not the only part of the answer. I know when I came into my first job in 1977, fresh out of college, HR was a big part of my interface in addition to my direct manager of the organization. Today, this is much more of a shared responsibility between what we believe is HR, the delivery organization, and managers itself, and now the RMO. So how we engage people more in line with their aspirations and motivations is key, and where in the enterprise will we have a transparent view? We think the resource management office is an important find of that. So this paper is out on the website today. It's part 1 of a 3-part series. Hope you get it, and welcome your comments on it, certainly. But a lot of research went into this, and one of the key findings that we had in that paper is the kind of work I do every day, my enjoyment of that kind of work, and the sense that my work is aligned with my career aspirations and goals, pretty fundamental to how engaged I am with the company that I work for. Interesting enough, I've heard so many people saying, with the millennials, it's just all about money. And I'll just tell you that none of our research supports that. So certainly money is important to everybody. I think too much is focused on that. And we certainly provide, by way, so I'll say some counterintuitive points in that paper too, about certain things that we found in this area. But we do believe is if the RMO plays an important central role to how we're going to allocate people to projects, where's a better connection to the database of where we should be storing people's wants, needs, and desires, keeping that fresh, and as we're allocating projects, finding better balance between efficiency and effectiveness of how we allocate people to projects and our employees' wants, needs, and desires. And we believe that the winners of the future are going to get that balance right in the organization. So watch for the upcoming couple of white papers as well. We think there's lots going to happen here over the coming 3 or 4 years in the marketplace. So I'll add the same slide I showed you up front, 2 more best practices here, and hope this is one of those things you rip out of the deck and pin it up in your office or your cubicle or however you want to use it. But number 9 and 10 is a properly designed skills database and process that focus on those 3 things that I mentioned: finding skills by role, regular cadence for updates, and some kind of validation mechanism. Definitely a best practice. We teach how to do this in detail in the certification program. And then number 10 is processes should be developed to better balance priorities for project allocations. Employee engagement is going to be really important to all of our future. We've got to get really, really good at it. So I'm going to segue to those of you who are not users, or as a reminder to what's out there. This toolkit has gotten dramatically larger just in the last 2.5 years since the Institute was launched. We've got research reports. I think there's 7 of them out there now and growing. And I mentioned one that's currently working. Tons of white papers. There's a collaboration tool. Our next power up session, by the way, half-hour, hard-hitting news you can use, March 27th, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Kimberly Carrieri from Dell EMC is going to be joining me to talk about employee engagement. And Dell EMC is going to share some of the best practices that they're finding is working for them. And then, other events and webcasts like this. And then if you go through a certification program, you get an even broader toolkit. One point that I've made before is, finding good RMs is hard, and getting them the right kind of education is important. And we certainly, the way that the Institute is keeping in business, the Selling Certification program, which we call the RMCP program. And it's a first of its kind certified professional skills development for resource managers to learn best practices, to get access to the special resource center and collaborate with industry peers. As I mentioned, we've got over 300 companies have invested time and energy in putting, in some cases, more than 100 people through this program. But it's fast growing for us, and we think because of the interest, people are getting value from this. The program comes in 2 forms, soon to be a 3rd form, by the way, but today we offer it in classroom. It's a 3-day classroom with a little bit of pre-read. You take a certification exam, and there's a recertification process behind it. We teach JITR, just-in-time resourcing, as the underpinnings of what's in there, and we give you a lot of in-depth training, including really good use of case studies as we're going through this to help embellish what we're teaching in class. We also have an online version of it. Matter of fact, we got a course that's just finishing up here pretty soon. And we teach that course in 6 2-hour segments with a little bit of homework in between. So those of you who can't travel, we can do it online. And I will tell you that we're working on an on-demand version of this that we'll announce and make available sometime later this year. Cost of the course is $18.95. And by the way, if you're at PMP, the course offers 16.25 PDUs for the in-class version and 13.25 for the online version. So you can double dip, so to speak, in your certification training. The next couple of programs coming up are April 9th in Cincinnati, Ohio. And if you get in before March 9th, you can save $100 on that. And then next online session starts May 22nd. Again, up till April 22nd, you can get in for $100 less with our early bird pricing. Easy to find more about it through the website, and you can apply, pay your money, do it all online. It's make it nice and simple and easy. We announced about a week or so ago our upcoming 2nd annual Resource Management Global Symposium in Dallas, Texas, at the beautiful and iconic Renaissance Hotel. There you get the football-shaped hotel thing there, the gorgeous bar sitting up there. For those of you who've been up in that facility, it's really great. But we got one whole floor of that hotel in their conference area for the symposium. We are expecting dramatic growth of the symposium this year, and really excited about an opportunity for you to network with your peers, to learn from industry experts, and spend 2 days with people that are immersed in this topic of resource management. So I hope you go check us out at the resourcemanagementinstitute.com/symposium and get some more information. And again, by the way, we've got a bundle deal going on as well. If you're thinking about becoming an RMCP and you want to go to symposium, you get a better deal if you sign up to do both. Before I take questions, I want to come back and say a special thanks again to these 3 companies, MavenLink, Keyed-In, and Kimball Applications, for their support of this broadcast, as well as their support of the Institute. It's fantastic to have them. We thank them for that very, very much. With that, Thomas, I know we have a few minutes left, and I'm going to give you an opportunity then to take over and help facilitate the balance of our broadcast and hopefully answer some of as many questions as we can during this time.
Yeah, absolutely, Randy. Thank you. Yeah, we're getting a bunch of questions coming in. So yeah, feel free to enter in any questions in your question window there on your GoToWebinar panel, and we'll get to those. One I want to pick off here right off the top is we had 2 or 3 come in when you were going through some of your research surveys of where the surveys are available. I think you had the URL up there, but they are on our site at the resourcemanagementinstitute.com/RMI-survey. So you can get on there. You can take the open survey, and then you get access to past surveys as well. So I wanted to let everyone know about that. Let's get right to it if you're ready, Randy. And I've got one that came in about the 2080 denominator. I wanted to read that to you. It said, can you clarify the denominator standards? And he mentions 2080, 1760, or 1560. I understand this to be hours in the work year. Why are metrics less desirable when using a different denominator?
Yeah, so 2080 is the standard that the RMI is trying to get the industry to adopt. We think more than half the industry has adopted it for very, very good business reasons. Some organizations decide to take PTO and sick time and training time out of that and say, well, I don't want to measure that. I'll take that out of the denominator and measure against after I've subtracted that stuff. For the reasons I mentioned earlier that are outlined in that report is that what we've seen is that the minute you take that denominator down, the data is very clear. Your results go down, and they go down for a variety of reasons. And I don't want to say any one particular organization is this, but I've lived in this world for 40 years, and clearly I've seen a clear connection. When I take that down, it makes my data look better. And it takes the pressure off, so to speak, of being able to compare to my peers in the standard. I mean, most are industry standards, like, take project management as an example, is once they establish some standards around various things that they're going to measure, and I got forced to benchmark against peers, against a standard that I had to adopt, it causes all of our inefficiencies to get put out into the sunshine. And again, the data doesn't lie. Is if you want to deal with differences between organizations or job roles or things like that, do those at the target levels. And so, we know that there are different standards for a developer versus an implementer, so to speak, in a technology environment. But you do it at the target level, not at the denominator level, how you measure utilization. And with this way, you can measure yourself against your peers industry-wide, and the data, again, doesn't lie. Adopt the standard 2080, and that alone has a lot to do with creating a better result.
Okay, thank you, Randy. Let me go to this one here. Can you speak to differences found with resource management when business is fixed fee versus time and materials?
Well, there's certainly a difference in the type of project, but between fixed fee and time and materials, quite frankly, they both use human capital. They're typically project-based at some level. And, quite frankly, the resource, while there are some idiosyncrasies between the two, the fundamentals of how I manage resources in a fixed fee versus T&M environment are just not that different. One of the things that just-in-time resourcing does, if you've implemented the process properly, it kind of normalizes those things that the process makes it work, equally effective, whether you're doing fixed fee work or time and material work. We cover that, by the way, in the certification program. We talk about both, and it always comes up, but I think people get a clear picture of why, if I just follow the process, the type of project I'm doing probably is really not going to matter. Okay.
Going down the line here, this was interesting. What would you say is the key difference between a successful resource manager versus a successful project manager? And he meant in terms of impact on success.
Well, so great question. To me, is it comes back down to how you want to measure success, and I always think of things that people do in businesses at the macro level of in the end, what is it that we're trying to do, and that's why you heard me mention earlier, and I beat on this point all the time with our members and organizations we might consult with, that in the end, project performance and your financial results are pretty doggone important. And so, the way I would think about measuring, somebody's success in RM as I would measure somebody's success in project management are pretty similar, as I would expect them both to make a contribution toward producing a better project outcome on time, on budget, great quality, with great consistency. Do it each and every time. And if you do that, of course, then the company's built its metrics the right way. The company's making the target margins and things it wants to do. There are certainly differences between those two jobs where some of the sub-metrics might be different, and maybe one's more focused on utilization than the other. But some of these things, like you saw some of the data, is RMOs getting tasked more with employee retention. That was unheard of 5 years ago. But now I think through things like just-in-time resourcing, people are realizing that, hey, you know what, those people in that part of the ecosystem can actually make a difference in employee retention. So anyway, those are a few of my top line thoughts there.
Yep. Thank you. Quick one here. I'll take this. It came in about, did you say PMPs can get PDUs through the RMCP certification program? Yes, that is correct. We do offer PDUs through the RMCP certification. More information on that can be found on the website. We have a page for both online certification as well as the in-class and the PDUs that are available for our PMPs out there. Next one here, Randy, I want to go to, it's kind of, I think came in when you were talking about your mega trends. Where do you see resource management function going in the future? And examples are more tool-based, offshore-based. What are your thoughts?
No, that was specific to the resource management function. Oh, yeah. Okay, I see the question out here. Yeah.
Yep.
So the function itself is, what I come back to is, if you're going to deploy a resource management process, I've described the basics is the RMO, like I would think a PMO would do, is what is the target resource management process that we're going to use to run our resource management utilization, irrespective of if I decide to decentralize that operation, which I wouldn't recommend you do, but operating by a common process is the one way to bind those things together. The RMO also should have some influence over what PSA or PPM tool. And by the way, I saw a question here, what's PSA? PSA is Professional Services Automation, PPM being Program and Portfolio Management Software as well. But those organizations should be helping pick the right tool, get involved in that process. How do I configure that tool to do a better job of resource management to our target state process and those kinds of things. So it's the RMO function I see very much like a PMO is they're owning the process, they're owning the execution of it, they're executing certain elements of it like project allocation, reporting, maybe helping drive the forecasting mechanisms in their businesses. But all things that are really important. Again, the certification program, we cover this in quite a bit on, what's a good RMO's construct look like. And the data that we're going to provide in these surveys, by the way, as I shared, we're going to give you a view of what your peer companies are adopting for responsibilities of the RMO and how they're measuring them.
Okay, we've got about a minute or so left. I think we got time for one more. I want to go to this one because it came in when you were talking about the new survey out there on RMO organizations. Demand planning is a primary responsibility in the RMO for 91% of the respondents. I think that's some of the initial data we're getting in. He says, this surprised me as I'm used to the demand function being more closely involved with the business and or sales stakeholders. Can you elaborate on perhaps the types of demand planning that is being done in RMO organizations?
Yeah. So again, I mentioned, demand planning. We think of a three-part approach to include business planning, I'll call it the tactical aspects of that as an example. We teach this three-part program in what we do in the certification program, but we certainly do not advocate that sales stops contributing to the forecast process. What we advocate is that there be better linkages of how sales might forecast sales, and then how those things get translated to the use of human capital. As we know, delivery plays a very important role in deciding, okay, how many people does that really take? What skill sets does it take? How much, I'm using partial people's time. What about if I'm using some contractors? And then, by the way, who's paying for those things? Who's taking the risks? Should we hire ahead of the curve if we see a spike in demand? And should we do some of this with contractors? And so what we've seen in better performing financially organizations, better customer satisfaction organizations, better, by the way, employee satisfaction organizations, is organizations that find a way to better link and work together, collaborate with sales on how do I create a demand forecast from a human resource point of view that has to deliver these things, that is in better step with what sales is telling me they're going to sell over a period of time. And that there should be some kind of interlock, and we could take through an interlock process. Matter of fact, one or more of our case studies we use in the training is about, let's go through a practice interlock and how we see the RMO working with sales to interlock on a demand forecast that leads us to training, retraining, hiring, use of contractors, and those sorts of things. And that's a place where, I'd say, again, two areas of businesses mostly fall down is this area of forecasting, because they've left it too much to sales, and sales can only do so much. Delivery's got to take a much bigger role in this area. And then, I mentioned the skills databases being a major pitfall for a lot of organizations, and we shared some of the data. Hopefully, people are paying attention to as well.
Okay, thanks, Randy. Appreciate your thoughts on that. I've got us a few minutes past the hour, so I do want to stick to our allotted time. So we're gonna wrap up and close here. First, I do want to thank everybody on the line for joining us today, for spending an hour as we went over the state of resource management from the RMI's perspective. Really appreciate the time everybody spending with us today. And Randy, I want to thank you too for presenting today's webcast, sharing some of that research with us. There's a lot of good data in there, and I hope everyone enjoyed that. And with that, we will sign off for this 5th annual State of Resource Management. As I mentioned, the recording will be going out this afternoon, and as well as a copy of the deck will be available on the website. And with that, I will sign off. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks, Randy.
Thank you.